You're listening to the Breakaway Wealth Podcast, the show that helps you build wealth faster, think outside the box, and break out of the herd. Here's your host, Jim Oliver.
Welcome back, Breakaway Wealth. I'm your host, Jim Oliver, and with me today is Tyler Dunagin. Did I say your name right?
That's right. You got it.
All right. I normally check it before, and I thought, wait a minute, it's counting down, and I haven't done it yet. So, Tyler, tell everybody a little bit about you and what you do, and we'll get into your background here in just a minute.
Sure. Yeah, Jim, great to be here. Good to see you this morning. So I started a company called TurnServe, and it primarily serves the largest property managers in the U.S. We're a platform of innovative brands. We have a painting brand, flooring, bathtub refinishing, an epoxy coating product, and a software brand all in one. And
Wow.
It's my playground. That's my background. My background's in multifamily property management. Broke out of that and started this company because I saw a huge need. And here we are today.
You know, I love that. You know, Tyler, I have a neighbor, actually just moved, but he was a neighbor. He had like some website that just provided forms for, landlords and different states and different contracts and all this stuff. And I don't know he's moving from a $3.5 million house to probably a $5 million house. So it's there's a need out there, I guess is what I'm saying, for that part of it. But it sounds like you're taking things even to another level. You know, I love what you're saying because, you know, you get these objections to people. Like people will say, oh, hey, I don't want to do that because, you know, I don't want to fix toilets and paint, you know, all this stuff. And they say, you know, I don't want to be a landlord, all this. And I remember like the first rental properties I had were in Colorado. I never saw them like physically. I never met the property manager physically, but he handled everything for me for 4 or 5 years. And, you know, the money kept on coming in. And back then it was a check, you know, so I'd get a check every month and I'd go down and deposit it.
Right.
And, it really was mailbox money. So like, you know, do you hear that a lot? Like, hey, I don't want to be a landlord. And like, how does your company help people solve that issue? And then I want to talk about what you just said about having all the different companies that do things.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, and it used to be mailbox money. Now it's inbox money, right? And they say don't be a landlord, invest in REITs. That's what the vast majority of people say today.
I wonder if Wall Street wouldn't want you to do that, would they?
Right, yeah, who knows? But I like the mindset. There's definitely a challenge in the landlord space. What it really does is test your systems and test your ability to manage expectations up front. If you wait until after the fact, until things happen to you and you're very reactive, you're not going to make it. You're going to burn out. And it's a systems game because of the time, speed, volume, everything else involved with it. And also it's people's livelihoods. If somebody's unhappy with where they live, they tend to not be super happy because they have to live in that place long-term and whatnot. So for us, we look at those challenges as an opportunity. And so my background is in managing 2,000 apartment units, $250 million portfolio. And you learn very quickly where your processes and systems are weak at because you don't have anybody else stepping up to the plate to take a swing there. Instead, it's you answering the phone at 2 a.m. and wishing that you chose another profession. So I learned the hard way through a lot of trial and error, what works, what doesn't. I'm always learning. I'm not perfect today, but fast forward to what we're doing, we're able to help facilitate over 300 apartments a month, getting them rent ready between renters from move outs to move ins, the services in between for property management companies that are global with their reach. Our network of management companies manages over 2 million units. We're not quite in all those today. I would love to grow into those, and that is the goal. But we have a pretty good system in place, and we sell convenience for property management companies.
No, that's perfect. You know, like, so you mentioned something early and it made me think of Logan Rankin. I don't know if you know Logan or not, but he's up in, in Wisconsin, but I'll think of the name of the town, but he was like at a $500 million of real estate, all multifamily. And it's all within 75 miles of his little town there in Wisconsin. And one of the things that his kind of not claim to fame, but one of the things that he's really good at is how fast he can do a renovation, right? So, you know, it's always funny when you think about somebody getting into real estate for the first time. And I always think of this one client that I talked to for like 2 years, trying to get him from Wall Street to being his own banker, to being a real estate investor, doing infinite banking, all this other stuff, and growing a real estate portfolio. His wife was a dentist. He was a business owner, but he was self-employed, if you know what I mean. So like the business is running him. He's like, I don't want to do this anymore. He was in his late 30s, a young guy. And, he's like, well, I can't do this. And the reason I can't do real estate and really, and his first deal was a discounted 100% seller finance. He was a painting contractor. So like the deal that he said he couldn't find, he couldn't do anything else, right? Was the first one was like perfect. And it was a boring old burr, right? Like, distressed property, renovate. And he's like, Jim, this actually works. I'm like, yeah, I know it works. It's like, it seems simple, right? But now that guy, he owns the businesses, but he doesn't run them. His wife's not a dentist anymore. She owns the practice and the real estate. I mean, it's like they did everything that they said they were going to do in like 5 years.
It's incredible.
Right? And I'm sure you have dozens of those kinds of stories, right? But what do you think, Tyler, like, you're eliminating one of the obstacles that people have, that when they say, hey, the reason I can't do that is, you're eliminating it. So then what do they say after you show them how you're going to eliminate it?
Yeah, and they can't quite say that they're just uncomfortable, and that's why they're not doing it yet. We definitely take that component out for them. And they always say, the hardest thing in real estate is to find a deal. The second hardest is to find a contractor and also a property manager. We tend to bridge that gap quite well for a lot of folks. And honestly, that's why our business has grown so much. It is a huge need. Not everybody wants to roll up their sleeves and do all that. And you mentioned it, timing is super important. Obviously, in real estate, loss to vacancy is a massive cost. Value add renovations, huge rent growth strategy there. What we've done on our side to help facilitate that and bridge that gap and that need there is we are built for volume and convenience. And so when somebody comes in and says, hey, here's my notice to vacate schedule, they're giving it us hopefully in advance, not always, but really we have 3 to 7 days to get an apartment ready, and we are doing hundreds a month. So that component, you can almost see why some people shy away from wanting to do that, because it's almost overwhelming. If I stop and think about the sheer number of volume that we do without knowing our systems and our reach, it could get overwhelming for me. Like I stop and think, like just saying it, like, hey, Jim, we did over 300 unit turns last month. I'm like, how did we possibly do that? But then you look at your systems, and I work a lot because I enjoy it, but I don't have to run the day-to-day operations. We have systems built for that and whatnot. And I think that component is what a lot of real estate investors either don't know exist or they wish that they could do, but they don't really want to. So we kind of fill that void. But you're right, that is a massive turnoff for people wanting to get into the space. And when you can no longer say, hey, remove one of the big 3 reasons why you're not getting into real estate, they say, okay, well, what about the other 2 now? So now their focus changes a little bit.
So I like that, Tyler, as you know, like if you sit down with somebody and you can project, hey, you're going to buy, and I'm just going to use a round number, you're going to buy this 10 unit property. I'm just going to use 10 because it's easy, or 100. Let's use 100. Then we can see the percentages. And you start showing this plan over 18 months, whatever it is, that you're going to renovate all 100 of these units, right? As things come up. And then what you're going to have on the other side of that, the value that you're going to have, right? And the rents, and it's just what I love about like multifamily real estate is it's not somebody's opinion. It's the books, it's the numbers, right? And you can see, hey, here's what rent should be. Here's what rent is. It's run down. This is what renovations are going to cost. And, like sometimes I've seen guys that, again, because we teach people infinite banking, there are credit unions, there are other banking organizations that will give you a loan based on the renovated value if you show the liquidity to do the renovations, right? So think about that, how huge that is. And especially in the Midwest areas like Wisconsin, like Ohio, where you're at, like some of these credit unions, I don't want to say they're aggressive, but they'll work with you, especially if you can share with them, hey, here's how I'm going to build this portfolio, right? And you say, hey, I have TurnServe. This company is going to do this. I've got this shit already done, figured out, right? And so I think that you maybe talk about that, how maybe that can help me go get money from the bank or the seller, because if I show the seller how I'm going to improve all of this, well, then you should feel really secure that I'm going to take the property. I mean, I'm not going to default, right? Because I'm going to take the property and put all these improvements in it. I'm going to pay you.
Right.
So talk about that maybe a little bit.
Yeah, if you boil it down, right, we talk about people's self-interest, and whether or not we like it, that's what it all comes down to. From a bank's perspective, a credit union's perspective, a seller's perspective that's carrying or what have you. If you're right, some local credit unions, they will roll up their sleeves and they'll get right into it. And if you come to them with a sound strategy, if you're a good operator, they like a track record, but you don't always have to have it, right? If you come in with a really sound business plan and you're with people that live this life every day. Example, not to toot our own horn here by any means, but if you say, hey, TurnServe is going to handle all of my turnovers, they do hundreds a month, whatever it is, that's going to be a little bit more compelling for a bank versus like, hey, my cousin Jim, no pun intended, Jim, he's going to help me with the painting. It's like, oh, well, there's a lot more that goes into it. And also like the seller too. If you could make sure that those other parties are confident, and you can kind of show them the roadmap and why they would possibly entertain it. Is it good for them? Is it bad for them? That's the only thing they're going to think of. And the more you kind of pad your trophy case with established players that live that life every single day, the more likely you are to be successful. And those lenders know that. Most sellers that are willing to carry note or what have you, they know that as well. So I think that element of confidence is not just good for the third parties, but also yourself. Getting into business or some sort of arrangement with somebody that has done it time and time again, it's just going to help your own confidence more than anything too. I do that in my current life. There's a lot of things I'm not overly good at, so to say, and I go to somebody that is an expert. They have done it time and time again, and my level of concern goes from a level 100 down to 25 just by having somebody in my corner. And if I could feel that, I know other people that are also incentivized with around the upside probably feel that as well. There's alleviation and confidence, and there's excitement eventually once you kind of check all the boxes. If you could talk about the problems and address them beforehand with a lender, like, hey, we know that there's going to be whatever it might be, and here's how we have it mitigated, they're going to feel that much more comfortable and confident about that operator, the syndicator, whatever it is.
No, I love that. I mean, you're 100% right. If I'm a seller, right, which I've sold companies, and if somebody came to me and said, hey, well, I've never run the company like that, I'm going to buy it from you. And, but man, I'm really excited. I wouldn't sell them anything. I mean, and one of the reasons that a seller would carry, one of the reasons for me and people that I see that are, whatever age or how much they have, is the cash flow so much better, right? I mean, if you amortize the purchase price for me, let's say we're going to do 100% over the next 20 years, your cash flow is about 2.5 times if you took a lump sum after taxes, put it in Wall Street, and hope you got 3 or 4% every year. Because that's what they would tell you that you could take out using the Monte Carlo method without running out of money. People think it's like 8%. It's not. It's like 3 or 4% over time in the different markets. But so if I could get 2.5 times the cash flow, then what's the only thing I'm worried about? Do you know how to run this company? Right? Yeah. Do you know how to run this portfolio? Well, yeah, I've got this company that's going to do it. I'm a big who, not how guy. Like, I do these hanging abs, right? And I'm like, I need something in my workout room in my house to do hanging abs. Well, I don't trust my mechanical ability to put something on the wall that's going to hold my 215 pounds and do hanging abs. So I want somebody else to come in and do that. Mount that up there, guarantee me I could weigh 500 pounds and it wouldn't come out of the wall, So it's the Nelson Nash, my mentor, used to say, a great tool in the hand of an imbecile is a, paperweight or something like that. He would basically say, unless you know how to use that tool, somebody else could use the same tool and they're like a master at it, right?
Yeah, of course.
So, we talk about mindset and we talk about like how to eliminate those barriers to entry or those barriers to success or those obstacles or those objections. And this just takes care of one of those things. I mean, it's just like, hey, you don't have to worry about that. And, I've owned properties that I've never seen. I've never talked to the property, or I've talked to the property manager, never met them, and they get their percentage. And away they go. Like I have no issue. Right.
Just a math equation at the end of the day, right, Jim?
Yeah. It's just math. Exactly. Like that's exactly right. It's like, hey, and I love when people say, and this too, well, how much is my cash flow going to be from each unit? Okay, gosh, that seems a little low. Well, no, hold on a second. First of all, you're not going to do anything. You're not exchanging time for money when you're doing this, right? That's number one. So you have to work harder. Just got to find more of them. And number two is we're going to take that cash flow, we're going to renovate, we're going to get rents right, and then now it's going to cash flow like this per a thing. And you don't have to go find somebody else's money. You got equity now to go buy the next deal, right? Like it's not rocket science, but it's like golfing. If you just grab the best golf clubs and you go out to the course and you start banging balls, you're not going to be a very good golfer. But you could take crummy clubs, go get lessons, learn how to swing the club, right? But you're going to learn that from a golf professional. But you're not going to go out and mow the course and and everything. I mean, like you would never do that, right? You have somebody that does that. You have a professional that does that. And so I love that you're doing that and you're eliminating the barrier of entry for people. And also then you're protecting their investment by doing it professionally. So give me like one success story that like you've seen just in your time that you're like, man, I can't believe that this person did this.
Yeah, and there's so much to unpack there. I'll answer.
Yeah.
But
unpack whatever you want.
Yeah. But one thing you said, exchanging time for money, right? Like, so at this phase of my life, I'm not a gazillionaire by any means. I don't have a full-fledged, staff at my house running my life or anything like that. But what I started doing is I started quantifying things in terms of time versus money. And even when you don't have a ton of money, ton of capital or anything like that at all, when you start flipping that metric, you realize that you're enjoying your life a lot more. And you have more opportunity than you ever had before.
Yeah.
And the person that's super worried about like, hey, my cash flow is going to be super low. Like, what am I going to do? You said it right. How much time do you have invested in that this month? Oh, you have 15 minutes reading a report. Okay.
Yeah.
Like that's what you got to focus on. To answer your question about a success story, man, I could go down the list. I'm going to make one that's really applicable right now for some of our real estate partners. We partner with property managers, owners, syndicates, you name it, PE funds that get involved. And a lot of these, the most valuable assets sometimes are the most, I don't want to say dilapidated, but they're the most distressed. They're undermanaged. They haven't had a rent growth strategy implemented in who knows how long. It was somebody's grandpa that owned the property and it was just, underperforming for quite some time. There's times where we have came in and the first thing we always ask is, hey, how long is your typical turnover process? And they'll say, about 24 days, 28 days. And we look at them and we think like partly we never make fun of them, but we say, would you believe us if we told you that could be less than 7 days right now and less than 3 days next leasing cycle? And they laugh and they say, no, that's not possible. And we say, let us show you the mathematics on this and show you how much money not only you can save because of the reduction of loss to vacancy, but also the improvements that we're going to do for you. And you can increase the rents of this depending on how long they haven't updated them. There's been some situations we do a value add. They increase rents 30%, 35%. Now that's on the extreme scale, obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously we can do that every time. But I would say there's a difference, and I don't know the exact math. If I had to guess, it's probably a difference of 5 to 8%, give or take, of a professionally done job. Is something as simple as making sure the visuals and the optics are on point. What's the paint look like? Is there roller marks everywhere? Is there blotching and everything else? Well, if you're trying to do a rent growth strategy, you have a potential tenant walks in there, you're charging top of the market, and they see a handyman special, a maintenance man special with paint on the floor and some on the walls and whatnot. they're not going to rent there. Like, end of the day, it all comes down to human decision. And so when we come in, we make everything uniform, professional, you name it. And it's not uncommon for us to not only save them thousands of dollars per unit a year just in reduction of loss to vacancy and because of our quicker turnover time, but also just rent grow over time as well. There might be an additional step, like if it's very outdated and there's color changes and there's series of other improvements going on, whatever it is, flooring upgrades. Sure, there's a little bit of initial hurdle to pay for, but you're going to realize the benefits of that for time to come for the next 3-5+ years. And so there's a portfolio local to us. I'm thinking of one right off the rip, 260 units. It's in Shaker Heights, Ohio. Great syndicator came in there and bought it. A great operator hired us to come in. We have gone through, I would say, 80% of his portfolio. He had air quotes, his self-proclaimed market rate rents of around $680 a unit. And it's not workforce housing. It's not affordable. It's market rate. And he was less than $700 when the next closest apartment complex around him, next to brand new developments, all these grants were given out, you name it. The next closest apartment complex was charging over $1,200 a month in rents. And we looked at him and we said, hey, I want to introduce you to a few people. Let us come in and help you out here. And now today, his properties win key awards from the NOAA, which is the apartment association around us, every single year. And had he not, I don't want to say that we saved the day for him, but we definitely came in and made him realize, like, hey, like, you're good at what you do, but you're also leaving a lot on the table just because you're overlooking this one aspect of the turnover process, of the management process. So, and I could go down the whole list. I would say that's our biggest compelling thing, Jim. It's the last thing I'll say about it is we sell convenience, and convenience translates to time, and time is everything. So especially in the rent world, if we could reduce somebody's loss to vacancy by even 50%, we can pay for ourselves 3 times over, and that's just savings passed to whoever it is.
No, I love that. It is like saying to somebody, there's so many people out there, and I think it's really, like it's funny when like people say, well, this younger generation. No, this younger generation actually kind of has it figured out. They know that they don't want to work for 40 years and then build up a nest egg and then hope you can live off it for the rest of your life. Because Tyler, where I live in Florida, 80% of the people that live here are snowbirds, right? And I can't wait for them to leave. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not kidding, but I'm sorry that I'm mean. But the thing that I see in our neighborhood is there are, out of that 80%, 90% of those people, they have a retirement fund that they're living off of, and they hope that they don't run out of money. And they when there's a vote on, hey, we're going to improve this at the country club or that, no, we don't need to be spending that money, right? That's their mentality.
Yeah.
And the reason is that they're living in scarcity because they have this finite amount of money, right? And it's in an instrument that's being debased every day by inflation, right? And so then out of that 80%, there's maybe 3 to 5%. One guy in Cleveland, he owns restaurants. I wish I could remember the name of them, but a bunch of sports bars there. And another guy that's in Ohio and Pennsylvania, and it's multifamily. Those guys are like, yeah, no, we want the improvements. Yeah, like they're living life, right?
Yeah.
They're not living in scarcity. They're living in abundance because they know they have this cash flow isn't this limited thing for X number of years. It's just going to keep on increasing. And if the government keeps on printing money, then my asset is going to go up in value. And as inflation happens, I just raise my rents.
That's it.
So it doesn't really matter the value of my property because rents aren't going to go down. So like people are like, well, you know what? I think there's going to be a crash in the market. Who cares? Like if I'm just looking at cash flow, which I do, I don't give a crap about anything else other than cash flow. So, that like, again, eliminating those barriers, Tyler, for people to say, man, I'll tell you what, I can do this. Right. Like, so my favorite guy from Cleveland, Ohio, JD Rockefeller.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And
I have his books all around my office.
And so one of my favorite books in from him is the letters to his son. it says like 38 letters. And I always ask people, have you read that? And they go, yeah, I read it. And I said, how many letters are there? And they go, 38. I said, no, there's 2 bonus letters at the end. Like, so if you haven't read it, then you wouldn't know that. Right.
Yeah.
And there's one. So think about this. This is a guy, and I want you to respond to this.
Sure.
This is a guy that was super poor in Cleveland, Ohio. And as he was super poor, he had this vision in his head of, I want to be the richest man in the world. Now, that takes some guts when you're a little kid to have that kind of big vision. Because most people are like, well, I just want to be comfortable. Like, I want to be wealthy. I want to be whatever. No. I want to be the richest man in the world. Maybe the richest man in history, right? But in one of the letters, so then you could buy this book, let's just say for $30, $20, $30. That is the richest man in the world that came from nothing, his advice to his son. Like, how much is that book actually worth?
Yeah.
Right. So, you said you said you're a big reader. How did you tell me about how that happened?
Yeah. So, and I'll speak to JD as well. Yep. So growing up, and I was going to say probably with Rockefeller as well, not having things that he wanted in his life, you feel that pain deeper than anything else. When you don't have stability, when like his father, for example, out just sabotaging their name and ripping people off and whatnot, that hurts. I don't care who you are, how tough you are. At the end of the day, when you lay down to go to bed, I'm sure that stung, and that probably that sadness turned to anger, the anger turned to motivation, and that's what probably drove him. So that part of it just, I think it really took off for him, and that was one of the elements. And I could go down a Rockefeller hole all day long. Jim, I have a bad habit of this. My brain goes down a pathway. I want to make sure I answer your question specifically. Ask me the question again one more time, just so I make sure I dial it in for you.
Yeah, well, I just as far as like I love when I said JD Rockefeller. A lot of times I'm explaining, well, here's some of the books that he wrote. This is the letter. But you said immediately, I'm a big reader. I've got his books all over my office. So I'm a big reader too. I try to read an hour a day. And I used to in my 20s and 30s and 40s, I did like every single day. Like where was that instilled in you, like to be a big reader?
Sure. So growing up, my family worked hard, blue collar. Every single day, like I never saw my dad take a sick day. To this day, he's still just doing his thing. And my mom as well, just go getters, you name it. And that, that work ethic was instilled in me. And although we worked hard and all those things, it was always a struggle financially. Like there's, how it goes. Like you could work as hard as you have to, and it's never quite enough. And you realize what sort of, I'll call them problems, come from financial situations, and whether that be stress, whether that be whatever it might be. There's a lot of negative consequences that come from certain stability around financial security and whatnot. And for me, growing up, I always like, wow, like if only we had this, then we wouldn't have certain problems. Like like whatever it was. And I had a media lens because I was a little kid. I was like, all right, well, if you type in on AOL at the time, like rich people, and like then all of a sudden all these history buffs would pop up. Rockefeller being one, all the Titans, everybody's seen the TV series, and there's a lot more outside of the TV series, but the Carnegies and the Vanderbilts and you name it, that whole slew of initial people that really just build out industries with almost zero resources, without zero technology, really. And for me, I just started reading when I was younger. Like it started off as fascination, like what did they have that I didn't? Like did they get lucky? Was it a gift from God? Like what happened here? And I was just fascinated. And when you're younger, you judge, right? You're like, oh, that person, because of this, that's why they have that. And then I was like, well, it's probably not true. And so I got curious about it more than anything. And I started just reading books, documentaries, bios, like you name it. And that initial curiosity is what got me into books about, and that's why today my favorite thing to read are biographies.
Yeah.
Fast forward today, and that all translates. What I've learned about those people, where there was an uncanny desire, just a relentless drive to achieve, and that like I told myself, like, I could probably replicate that. I don't know if I could replicate their fortunes right now. I don't know if I could do these things, but I could relate because I was competitive and I was, once I'm fixed on something, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. And so that led me to learn more about them. And then I realized, like, oh, there's probably mindset things that are a little bit different here too. Then I started reading about psychology, and then I started reading about mindset, motivation, and self development, and then reading more stories, Sam Walton's story, and you name it, just on and on. I was just more so curious. And the more I read, the more I felt like I was kind of evolving of like my depth with certain people I looked up to, but also like follow their lives a little bit. And that helped me kind of reference where I'm at and where I want to be versus where they were at and where they are and what they did and what they were doing that was different, whether it be timing, luck, drive, you name it. And now I can kind of relate those things. So really for me today, it's almost out of self-preservation I read, but also just relentless curiosity because I'm so fascinated by people that are just doing things like that part of things, good, bad, and different. I appreciate and respect the heck out of people that just get up and do, even when there's a lot of uncertainty and fear.
You just said something that's key, I think, key to success. And there's a great scene for Ted Lasso, but you said, I'm curious, right?
Yeah.
And you remember this scene? Have you watched Ted Lasso?
Yeah. And I've heard this a bunch too.
Yeah. So you know the scene that I'm talking about where he's playing darts and he said, like, hey, these kids that picked on me, they never said to me, like, they weren't curious, like, and like, you didn't ask me, hey, I'm curious, Ted, have you ever played darts before? Like, and all this stuff. He comes back and he beats Rupert.
Yeah.
And but that whole thing, like when you ask somebody a question and you say, hey, Tyler, I'm curious, where did this come from? Right? Like it makes that person want to engage, right? Because curiosity is so important. Imagination, Einstein said imagination is more important than knowledge. Like if you can't visualize having this portfolio and having where you're not exchanging time for money, if you can't visualize it, it will not happen. Absolutely. Right? But so the way that you build a vision is somebody else that's done it.
Yeah.
So that's back to the the biographies, right? And then who, not how, who can do the functions that you're not sure how to do, but then you're coming up with the plan. Then also who can coach you and strategize. Hey, let's look at your vision. Let me guide you through this. I've done it before. I've seen other people do it before. Let me help you. Right. And so I think that's really cool because anytime we're removing barriers of people having great success, then I'm all in. And I know you've seen somebody that you think, oh, I didn't think that person was like going to blow up, and then they blow up. Right. And, and I love that. I love that. Like, like the guy that I was talking about with the wife that was a dentist. It was like 5 years in, he said to me one day, he said, hey, I don't want to give you too much credit, but you changed my life. And I said, well, I appreciate that. Like, no, I mean, and you shouldn't give me too much credit. You did it, right? Like you took action. But, it's funny when somebody just says, okay, I don't have any more. There's no more barriers. There's no more objections that I can come up with to not do this. So now I believe I can do it. Right. So obviously along the way, you've read a lot. You've I'm sure gotten a lot of good advice, seen a lot of successful people. What's the best advice anybody's ever given you?
Best advice I ever had, any best advice anyone's ever given me. So I grew up playing sports, and it was my way of kind of like letting loose and just marching and trying to drive and just find validation, but also purpose and whatnot. And sports early on for me did that. I had a coach, Bob Clark. He was my football coach, and people viewed this guy as a stereotypical, just hard ass football coach from like the 70s, 80s, and what have you. Although he coached me in like 2005 range, like around there. And he was constantly pushing me, just riding me. He'd make me run extra. He'd make me just, I could win the sprints, and he would constantly say, "You didn't run fast enough, Tyler. Everyone do it again." Like, why is this guy picking on me? Like, what is this guy's deal? And I'd go home and I'd have tears in my eyes, just frustrated, just all the time. And I'm not saying all of his approaches were like spot on, but what he was doing was pushing me, just driving me, and he's instilling confidence in me, making me realize capable of doing things way more than I think. And in hindsight, that was the best thing that happened. But one time he said, he came up to me and he said, Tyler, I want to tell you something. And I want you to remember this because it goes back to everything I've been trying to teach you. And he said, Tyler, if you take care of the small things, the big things take care of themselves.
Yeah.
And he was talking about, I'm not sure if he was talking about life or not. I was too in the moment, and I just was fascinated that this guy opened up to me and like let his guard down to say that. But when he said, if you take care of the small things, the big things take care of themselves, I realized the small things in sports, it was the consistency, the hydration, the weight room, the practice, the whatever it is, but also that's carried through in life too. In my businesses today, you can get overwhelmed looking at the big picture. There's a million things to do every single day. Some of these feats seem a million miles in the air, and you realize you have to dissect these things and take care of the small things one by one. And inadvertently, you don't realize you're taking care of the big things when you make those small, tough choices, those small daily interactions you have to do. And that is how I run my businesses today. And anytime I feel overwhelmed, I break it down and I compartmentalize and I say, okay, what's the smallest fundamental block here that I need to fix and solve or whatever it is? And I go with it. That is the best advice I've ever gotten in my life.
No, I love that. I do the same thing kind of with a mind dump where I like take these big things and then like break it down to like what action could I take to get today just to make progress on something. But you said something, I coached baseball, football, and wrestling for years, and I used to tell kids that if I treat you like you are, I make you worse. If I treat you like you are what you could become, then I help you become that. Right. So like when I would get on somebody, the kid that can't do it, I don't get on that kid at all. It's like they just show up and try to take up space, man. Do your best.
Yeah.
But like the kid that has talent, like the kid that I need to lead the team that needs to be better because we got these other kids that are weaker spots. I ride that kid like a mule. Yeah. And like I remember my coach way back when 40 years ago saying, if I'm not yelling at you, you got a problem.
Absolutely.
Right. So like, because, I've given up. So, all right, Tyler, what is, if God came down from heaven and only allowed you to retain the knowledge that you've received from one book that you've read, what would that book be?
Yeah. And great question. So there's a slew of books I always recommend. And a lot of those are very much so like specific on how to do a certain thing, whatever it might be, finance or marketing or whatever it is. But the one book, if I really had to put an answer to this, Jim, it's definitely this. Somebody encouraged that I read the book As a Man Thinketh by James Allen to me early on when I was in my pursuit of, I was sick of like not feeling fulfilled in my life. I was early in my journey, early 20s, mid 20s, that range, not quite a kid anymore, but you're not quite established to feel validated in the world. You don't know your direction yet. I was frustrated and I would just reach out to anybody that was doing stuff. And I just talked to him. I pestered everybody. And I had one person that just said, hey, I love what you're doing. I love how just this, out of the cuffs you are. And like, here you go. And they said, read the book As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. And I do. And I did. And it's a small book. It's a quick read, but it speaks to mindset. It speaks to just thinking things into existence and realizing that perspective, perception, all of those things are your world. And every single thing that happens to you, it's not necessarily a challenge or a failure. It's an opportunity. As cliche as that sounds, that book really helped me reframe my thought process from going from either insecure, uncertain, you name it, to just feeling confident. And even when I'm not super comfortable or even when I'm not a subject matter expert, just owning the sheer fact of, hey, I don't know everything, but I don't need to. I need to have this mindset and I'll figure it out. As a Man Thinketh changed my life. That is the number one book I recommend to people that ask me what we should read. And it's such a quick read too. It's good for airplane rides, you name it. You could read it in less than 2 hours, depending on your reading speed. And it's a good reminder. I try to read it every quarter or two just to keep up on it. When I feel overwhelmed, when I feel like I'm just doing too much, I pull it out, read a couple of chapters from it, and I'm good to go. That book changed my life, Jim.
I love it, man. And I love how passionate you are about that book. And I love that book. I probably read that book originally 35 years ago. And you're right. It's impactful. And it's funny because every once in a while, like in my Devo group or a friend or something, somebody will say something about that book. And I'll think, that's because, by the way, so something that would change your life that you can do in less than 2 hours.
Yeah. Think about that.
Right. I mean, so like right now today, I guarantee you that almost every single person that's listening to this could read half that book today and half of it tomorrow.
Absolutely agree.
Right. And at the end of that, if you implement any idea in the book, it'll change your life. Right. So like, it's like, there's no objection you can come up with that you can't do it. I have a new client. I was just thinking of this objection. Well, I'm blind. I can't read that book. You can listen to it. This dude owns sports bars and restaurants in the Northwest, and that's not stopping him. You know what I mean? Like, it's like,
that's awesome.
I love that mindset thing, and that's a great book. It's just like, and it's, I see the original version that I had. I see it in my head, and yeah, I agree. It makes me want to go read it. So thank you. That'll motivate me to go read it again. It's been a while. Of course. All right, Tyler. Well, how do people get a hold of you, and how do they see like all the different things that you offer and get a consultation, whatever it is? Tell me where to find you.
So first, I'm always down for networking. Find me on LinkedIn. I am most active on there. I respond to every message unless it's an AI generated sales message. So hit me up on there. Always down to network, introduce people. Even if I have nothing to gain or give you, I just love being able to connect. Find me on LinkedIn. Dunagin Collective is a combination of my business interest and also personal interest as well. Has some of my about and some of the companies I'm involved with and some of the nonprofits I enjoy. So Dunagin Collective for kind of an overview about me. And then TurnServe.com has all of our platform brands on it. ApartmentPainters.com, ApartmentFlooring.com, Liquid Liner, our product business, and our software business, all on the platform. So reach out to me. I will engage with you. And don't be shy. I love socializing with people.
Yeah. So, what I would say as we wrap up, audience, Tyler gave some great examples, does a great service. So read the book and check out Tyler's information. And, what you have to do is eliminate the fear that's inside of you, and action cures everything. I used to say action cures fear, but action cures everything. And so you can take little actions today. Like, you could buy that book, you could have it on Kindle, you could have it if you need the physical book, Amazon, I'm sure you could get it by 4 to 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. That's what's cool, is it can change your life in a couple of days. So, Tyler, thank you so much for sharing and being a great guest on the show. And audience, we're going to wrap this up like we always do with the incredible words of Earl Nightingale. Take it away, Earl.
Here's the key to success and the key to failure. We become what we think about. Now let me say that again. We become what we think about.
Thanks for listening to the Breakaway Wealth Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to this show wherever you're listening so you never miss an episode. If you want to start increasing your wealth building ability right now, go to community.createtailwind.com to join our free online community and get access to free, in-depth training designed to help you build real, lasting wealth. See you next week.